Welcome to Crunch Time, a program dedicated to helping you survive the crunch times in your life, whether they are caused by accidents, natural disasters, poverty, economic recession, depression, or all-out economic collapse, or whether they are caused by your realization that today's food supply is being contaminated by artificial fertilizers, pesticides, and genetically modified organisms, and over-processing of crops into what can hardly be called food. We want to help you through the crunch times in your future by teaching you what we have learned about organic gardening, food storage, and food preparation. We'll bring you into our kitchen and into our garden and share with you what we have learned, hopefully before your crunch times arrive. Now here is Chef Francois. Welcome back to Crunch Time, where Jesus is King and all our desires are to serve Him. This show is about survival, gardening, and cooking. And in survival mode, we may not have the use of an electric oven or a gas oven or even a wood stove. So I'm going to show you how to make a wood stove out of tin cans. I've gone to the recycle center because I don't get coffee cans. I don't drink coffee. My wife drinks coffee, but it comes in a plastic can. So I had to go to the dump, the recycle center, and get some cans, cleaned them out. And I've got a couple different coffee cans here, and I've got some other cans in the bottom, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. This coffee can we could use, but since this one's cleaner, I'm going to use this one. I want to have a combustion chamber inside the coffee can that comes up almost to the top. So this can here is the right height. I wish it was a little smaller in diameter. I wish it was this diameter. And it's not, it's a little bigger. But I'm going to use the bigger one anyway. And then we're going to need another can to go in sideways here. And I had a nice clean can here, but gee, I can't cut the bottom of it off because it's all in one piece. It doesn't have the ridge that you can cut with the can opener. A way to clip it on there. Well, maybe there is a way. I'll get my glasses on and see. No, there's not. Anyway, we're not going to use that can, we're not going to use that can, we're going to put those over there. We're not going to use this big one, it's too short. We're going to put that over there as well. But we are going to use these 4 cans. I'm going to put these off to the side. And basically what we're going to have is we're going to have a front-loading place to put wood and air underneath. And then we're going to have that joining with the combustion chamber inside like that. And then we're going to have this separate from this so that it'll be insulated. So if you touch it while the inside the combustion chamber is hot, it won't burn you. So we're going to insulate in between it. And there's a number of different things we can use to do that. So what we're going to start off by doing is we're going to cut a hole in the front of the big can, and we're going to cut a hole in the side of that can. And in order to do that, I'm going to need a straight edge, which I don't really have. I have a screwdriver. I'm going to grab my ruler, and I'm going to use this for a straight edge. And I'm going to mark. I'm going to place that right there. I'm going to place that right there. Get my magic marker, and I don't want to be near the ridge or seam, so we're going to cut on the back side of the seam. And basically we want to cut guess I don't really need that straight edge. I'm just going to eye it down from the top. As I look down here, I can see my mark. And if I don't cut it big enough, I can always spread it out further later. So how do I cut into this? Well, I've got tin snips, but you know, unless I cut the bottom off and then cut into it that way, I can't really cut into it with the tin snips. But I do have a sharp knife, and this is fairly thin metal. So I'm going to see if I can, I can poke a hole in with my knife. And I might even poke it that way as well. And I'm going to try to use my tin snips from that hole to cut, ½ inch away from my mark. 3/4 of an inch away from my mark. Because what I want to do is I want to cut some tabs. There, we have a hole. And you can see the mark 3/4 of an inch away from that hole. And what we're going to do is cut some tabs perpendicular to the line that we have. Basically, these lines will be on a radius, or a number of different radii. From there, I can fold those out. So I've got a bunch of slits that I can fold out. I'm going to use regular pliers. I've got some water pump pliers here too, but I'm going to use the regular pliers. And I'm going to fold those out. And hopefully my can will fit snugly right inside of those. If not, I can reach in there and cut the slits out a little bit more. Or I can put the tabs on the inside of the can. I would like to be able to have it so I can screw the can together, the two cans together somehow. Alright. We are going to see that our can fits right inside. Ooh, that's good. So I could have these tabs folded down, and I could put pop rivets in there if I had a drill, or I could put some screws through there, which I do have down in the car. So here's what we've got. And I'm going to go get my screwdriver and my screws. I'm going to put at least 2 screws. Maybe pop rivets would be better because the screws will stick out into the place there. Anyway, before I can do that, I've got to cut the bottom out of this can that's going to be the feed tube for the wood. Now, both of these cans that I'm using, I don't know if somebody else's can opener doesn't open it tight to the edge like mine does, but they each have a ridge around the inside. Right there. I don't particularly care for that ridge, though it does stiffen up the end of it, so I'll probably leave it on there. I could cut it off with this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave that on the outside, and then on the inside I'm going to put that together. So let me go get my screws and my screwdriver, and I will be right. My screwdriver is electric, portable, and my screws are made for ductwork, for heating and ventilating. I'm going to take off the screwdriver bit, and inside here's a hex head socket that's just the right size to grab this hex head screw. Fits right in there. Doesn't have a magnet, which would be nice, but I am going to take this and put it up against one of these tabs. Maybe I should do it this way. Okay, I've got it going through the first layer, and I want to make sure it's lined up to where I want it on the second layer. So I'm going to push that in to the right spot. And take another screw. That one I can find. I'm going to put that screw on this tab right here. And I'm going to put one on the top tab. And I'll put one on the bottom tab. Hold it up against the corner of my counter here so I can hold it in place without my hands. Okay, 4 screws, 4 tabs. The only problem is they stick out inside. They will, at least the top one, will catch on the wood that we're going to slide in there. But the bottom one is fine, and the 2 on the side could be used to hold the shelf that's going to end up being in there. So we're going to be fine with that. Alright, next thing we want to do is mark that same size hole in the side of our can. I'm going to use this can because it's easier to work with right now. And we don't want to be on the seam. We'll cut it on the back side. And since that's going to stick down 1/4 of an inch or so, I want to have it up. Actually, I want to take this can and have it even with the top and know that it's going to be up about 3/8 of an inch here and another 1/8 of an inch here, so I want to be up at least 1/2 an inch. So 1/2 inch from here over is where I want my hole. And we're going to cut it open the same way we did the first one, except this is probably a little thicker. So the knife may not cut into this metal as easy as it did the other tin can, but we're going to find out. Well, it went in just fine. Alright, if we can get our tip of our cutter in there and underneath that metal. Oh, there we go. I just realized this can has got a plastic label on it, and I thought it was just painted. Not only has it got a plastic label on it, inside that plastic label, the can is painted. that. It's painted with a holiday scene. This can was made to be able to use, by peeling the label off, to be able to use it as a decorative holder. So, we have to make a new circle because our circle is gone. We want it to be 1/2 inch up from that edge. We wanted it to be centered on that. That's pretty good. And my hole is centered on the circle, so I'm just going to cut some tabs. Alright, now do I want this can, well, we can't have the tabs inside the can because there's no other way to get that can in there than to put the tabs on the outside of that can. So we're going to just pull the tabs all the way out, just a little bit wider on the sides. See if the can easily fit in. It does, but will I be able to get it in from the outside, on the inside, with that sticking out that far? Looks difficult, but I'm going to force it in, and I'm going to ignore my phone. Here is definitely where I should have some gloves on, because I'm going to be working. Notice I'm prying the tabs out a little bit as I'm prying that on the edge of the can. Hey! Easier than I had thought. So we want to center the inside can. It should be up from the bottom somewhat, and I can put some screws in there when I get to it, but what I want here is to put these tabs flush so I can flatten these tabs back down. Should have gloves for this part at least. Those tabs are sharp. Alright, so once again, I'm going to put a screw in from the top. On this tab right here. That's good. And I want to put one on the bottom. But I want that to be in the right position. So when I get my screw up against it, I'm going to pull out on that. That looks pretty good. If anything, it could have been in a little further. Now I can put as many screws as I want on the bottom because there's only going to be air going in there. So on these last two screws, I'm going to put them towards the bottom so that they won't interfere with the wood going in. can come right through, honey. Don't worry about me.
Okay.
I am making a emergency cook stove. There. Pull off the last of the plastic label. And this is fairly rugged. With those screws, I wouldn't even need to fill it with insulation. The air would insulate it just fine. So let's show you what we have here. If you look in here, we've got a number of screws, but we're going to have a platform right here. So the only two screws that are going to bother is the top two. And I may just replace those with pop rivets if they interfere. And actually this can is off the bottom. It's being held by these screws and it's off this bottom. So even if I had it sitting down there and the inside can got hot, it wouldn't burn the picnic table or counter or whatever I have underneath. Now I'm going to put just a couple more screws on the bottom just to get some of these tabs held in better, because I don't want them to catch anybody's finger and cut them. As long as I'm screwing on the bottom, that's not a problem. To hold this steady so the can doesn't move. Now that is good and sturdy. We don't even have to worry about that can transferring the heat to the outside. Now the last thing we have to make is a shelf in here in order to have the wood on top of the shelf and the air going under the shelf. Now I want to take this can, take the bottom off it, and flatten the can out and cut it so that I can make a shelf. And if I cut it right on that weld, well, I am going to have to cut that extra ridge off that I talked about earlier so that I can flatten out the can easier without that interfering. Here's the little ring. Alright, now if I cut it right near that seam, but I know what I want in there, and I know I'm going to want a tab sticking out. So instead of cutting all the way across, when I get about a ½ inch to the end, I'm going to cut a tab off to the side as if I'm cutting two lines here and here. And then cut right across there so that we have made this tab. And we're going to want a tab like that on both sides. Now, I need to flatten this out. Best place to do it is probably on a piece of concrete with a hammer. But for now, I'm just going to flatten it out the best I can. And if I have to, use my pliers. Like that. Now, I've got to measure how wide this can is and cut it so that it'll fit inside. So I want to cut along this line and then have a tab sticking out over here. So we're going to cut, not actually on the line because the line up's a little crooked. And cut my tab. Then end up with a shelf that looks like that. And that should fit. Well, I've got that ridge that we talked about earlier. And right where this shelf is going to go, I'm going to flatten that ridge so that this will fit right in there. Flatten it here as well. Now this should fit right in there. Alright, close-up view of our finished product. We have a shelf here to put wood on top of. Notice it's bowed up so that if the weight of the wood gets on it, it's not going to bow it down. All the screws underneath are not going to interfere with anything except for air. And feed the wood into there until it comes into there. And then we can let the smoke come up this way. The last thing we need to do on this is to add some screws up on top so that when we put our frying pan on top, or our pot, say we're going to use a pot, if we put our pot on top right now, the smoke has no place to go because it's blocked off. But if I put some screws here so that there is enough room, and if they're screws, they're adjustable in height. And I'm going to use three. A three-legged stool is easier to stabilize than a four-legged stool. Now if we put our pot on there, you can see that we have airspace right through the inside, through underneath. And that finishes it off. Next week we'll show you how to cook on this stove using one little piece of wood, 1.5 by 1.5 by 6 inches long, to cook a whole meal. In the last minute of our show, I'd like to tell you about the real reason for this show. Jesus Christ, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Without Jesus as my Savior, I would not be confident entering into these trying times that lay ahead. If Jesus is not your Lord and Savior, I suggest you send me an email at crunchtime@roadrunner.com. and ask me how you can join the God who loves you, His Son Jesus Christ, and His disciples in everlasting life. For now, I say to you, God bless and keep you and yours. I'll see you next week on Crunch Time with Chef Francois.